And the public can also access this meeting via WebEx technology. The Burlington School Committee will hear public comments in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on Burlington Cable Access TV, and video audio recordings are being made. This meeting of the Burlington School Committee is held here in person at the School Committee room in the Burlington High School Central Office. It's easier to read it off this way. Sorry. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. If you are participating remotely, please identify yourself by typing your name on the screen in advance and verbally once you are identified to speak. We request that you please turn on your camera for remote, and comments and statements are limited to 3 minutes. And for people who are in person, for public participation, we ask that you actually sign in the sheet behind when you came in, and also the comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. The public can also join this meeting by access code number 2342-460-1353. Password is Tuesday. I also will read our equity statement for the Burlington Public Schools. Educational equity means that every child belongs and receives whatever support he, she, they need to develop his, her, their full academic, emotional, and social potential to learn and thrive every day. This begins with kindness and valuing the humanity of every child and individual. So, thank you, and we will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the warrant, but the warrant wasn't shared with us this week, so it is a moot item. The next item is approval of the meeting minutes of April 25th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair votes aye, so that's 5-0-0. Next, the approval of meeting minutes of May 9th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The chair votes aye, that's 5-0-0. Is there anyone here tonight for the public participation part of the meeting in person? No. Is there anyone on the WebEx who is here for public participation? Okay. Now we have information and reports. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving our way down, I think Matthew, as he mentioned, will be working with us again next year, but I think he is very busy in end of the year activities, and I did not receive a written update from Matthew this week, but I am sure he is taking advantage of enjoying all the end of year celebrations, as well as all the work that's due for that he's trying to finish up. So again, we're all thinking of you, Matthew.
All right. Are there any subcommittee reports? Yes.
I'd like to report the subcommittee for the Board of Health. We had a good meeting, myself and Ms. Simon. Helped them craft a public participation policy to model the school committee's public participation policy, and the meeting minutes will be following shortly after approval.
Okay. Any other subcommittee reports? I do remember we were requesting, Mr. Cunha, that we get some kind of transportation subcommittee going again, or is that in process?
It's ongoing, yes. I don't have anything tonight to present.
But we talked about maybe involving the subcommittee. So,
It's the same people, isn't it?
Correct, yeah. I will reach out and I will schedule some time to meet.
okay, good. All right, thank you. Next is Ways and Means, and Mr. Eiler and Mr. Moran are here tonight. Yes, Mr. Moran? Moran, I'm sorry. God, I should know that. Thank you, Mr. Moran.
I don't have anything, but Mr. Eiler here sure does.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warren, Madam Chair. So this is in regards to the Fox Hill building project. I attended the recent community forum, and one thing that seemed like it would be very beneficial would be to have some financial background regarding the various options on that project. So I wanted to
Madam
just
Chair, if
spend-
I could, through the chair. I have a little bit of exception with this document as presented. It's a little disingenuous that we refer to as a mega school versus combined school. If we can amend the wording on that to help not drive a narrative, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
All words have meanings. So the financials that I'd like to discuss here are some of the options that have data associated with their sizing, some of the other options that involve renovations and so on. There's a little less clear data, so I didn't include those. So I want to make it clear that this isn't all the options on the table by any means. It's just some of the ones that we had enough data to do some analysis on.
Excuse me, so could you clarify who has put this information together? Because you, did this Ways and Means Committee meet and decide they wanted to present this information to the school committee?
Yep, getting to that.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. Can you tell us the context?
Oh, absolutely. So this is work that was done between myself, the vice chair, Mr. Davison, and the head of our town hall, or I'm sorry, member of our town hall 1 committee, Frank Monaco, which handles financial issues. So this is I don't want to suggest that this has been voted on by Ways and Means, because it hasn't. But as chair of Ways and Means, I felt it was useful to get this information out there for people to review. And all the assumptions that went into this are described in the spreadsheet that I'll go over in a moment, and all the sources are in there also. So I definitely encourage people to review it and decide how they feel about it, and if they feel the math is correct. And it certainly is very easy to expand with other options as they become available, or as people might wish us to do. So going to the spreadsheet now, which I believe Mr. Kuna will be putting up on the Jumbotron there. And I believe you have printouts of it also with you. There's a URL mentioned at the bottom. If members of the public want to copy that, or anyone want to copy that, they can certainly try different assumptions, plug it in, and do what they will with it. So if we look at the top here, so with any of these solutions, they involve bonding, which we're limited to about a total of 27 years on the bonding. 4% is the typical or most recent interest rate associated with that period of bonding. The building cost, as you'll see, is taken from the MSBA site. Building costs have a fairly clear trend line, which is increasing about 7% a year. But one of the most recent projects happens to be Amesbury, where the cost per square foot is $769. So that was taken as a baseline, and I say it happens to be that one project, but it fits in very well with the trend line. Another data point in here is, what does it cost incrementally to have $1 million added to the tax levy, or removed for that matter? And in terms of an individual single-family household in FY23, that meant $44.70. So if $1 million needs to be added to the levy, that's how much would be added to an individual tax bill. Two other points of reference are the residential tax increase per year has been roughly 4.25%, and the residential tax per year is roughly $6,200 in 2023. So let's go through some of the scenarios, and I'll explain where the data comes from and what it means. So the first scenario is just a very simple one of what if we just replaced Fox Hill and forget about Pine Glen for the moment, just looking at that one school. So taking square footage numbers from Danisco's presentation at the May 2nd SBC meeting, that's where the square footage numbers are coming from. So if we had a 325 student school, you can see if it's built in 2025, due to that 7% increase in building costs, the cost per square foot would be roughly $823. Multiply out the square footage, you get a project total cost of about $70 million. Now, a big question is what's the MSBA percentage that they're willing to cover? We heard at the forum that 25 to 29% was a realistic estimate. We know that 45.5, if everything was eligible for reimbursement, would be the upper bound. I've talked to one of the SBC members and asked them to, and they agreed that they would go and research that with the OPM and architects to get some validation on where that number is actually coming from, because it's obviously fairly fundamental. But using the number that they gave us, I'm using 25% here. So that gives the town bonded cost of $52.7 million, which is 75% of the number. So now what does that mean in terms of an annual cost to the town? That comes out to $3.2 million. And that's based on the 27-year bonding and a 4% bond rate. So obviously those numbers, if they were to change, would affect that. And now to bring that home, so residential tax, I'll call it a tax cost because it isn't necessarily fully an increase since other things may be coming off the debt schedule. But the tax cost is $144 a year for an average single-family house with that. So now I'm going to throw in one more complication here, which is to take the present value of these numbers. So what is present value? Just to make sure we're all on the same page, if I have $100 million, I don't, and I was earning 5% a year, then 1 year from now that'd be worth $105 million. So I'm indifferent in terms of spending something that's cost $100 million this year versus $105 million next year. So we say that the present value of $105 a year from now is simply 105 divided by 1.05, and that gives $100 million. And 2 years from now, it would be roughly 110 million, and so on. It's compounded interest. So because some of these options involve spending in different years, it's important to take a present value to get a legitimate comparison. So to simplify that, I took just the first year cost, whenever it was, and determined the present value of that back to FY23, the current fiscal year that's coming up on an end here. So if you do that, that gives $133, that first gray box that you see at the top there. So that's the, what I'll call the, well, that is the present value of the first year tax costs per household. So now let's try a second option here, the 640 student school option at the Fox Hill site. You can see all the data there in terms of square footage and cost per square foot and so on. Again, assuming the same 25% reimbursement. I did throw in an additional cost associated with that project, which I'll call the anti-wildwood feature. If we look at that, there's an ongoing cost. So Pine Glen will be replaced by this project. But you have this empty building, which we want to ensure doesn't just decay away and become useless. So I put in a $10 million cost to basically the ongoing cost to maintain that school. There is not a lot of science in that $10 million number. I admit that. You can see that the incremental cost of that is relatively low anyway. But at any rate, if you look at the second gray box, you can see that that adds up to about $261 in terms of a per household tax cost. And then finally, if we look at the third option presented here, it is, let's say we just built identical 325 student schools on both Fox Hill and Pine Glen, replaced both of them. And stagger it, because it's a little unlikely we'll do that in the same year. So let's say we do Pine Glen in 2027 and Fox Hill in 2025, just for sake of argument. So you can see that the building cost on the second one per square foot is obviously higher because it has that extra couple years of compounded growth in building costs. And there's also an assumption based on what we're hearing from the OPM and architect that the MSBA reimbursement for that would be 0%. So when you factor all these in, you can see that the total on that is $319, that third gray box. So what's the net of this? And I'll throw in a couple other pieces of data before I'm done here. But the net of this is, if you if we just look at the last two options, that the cost of doing a single 640 student school versus two 325 student schools, which in total are roughly the same number of students, that the incremental cost in terms of present value is about $58 per household. So that could be perceived as a very large delta and disqualifying, or it could be viewed as, gee, that's not as much more as we would have imagined to have what the perceived benefits of the two separate schools. But the bottom line is it does come out to about $58 per household. So I found that interesting. And I want to throw in just a couple other things for reference now. So what does this debt service mean in the big picture? If we, just to put it in perspective, our current debt service in FY24 is $8.2 million. That's principal and interest together. So that $8.2 million, as you can see, is in the same ballpark as where option 3 ends up, and and option 2 would be a little less. So the point of that is, we're talking about, in either of these cases, we're talking about fairly substantial increases to our debt service, almost doubling it from where we are today. So that's, as if you didn't notice already, that's why it's a big deal. But that's why I thought it was important to bring in some of the financial information, because this has to affect our decision-making ultimately in the end here. And also, to put this in a little more perspective, if we look at the debt service coming up for other projects in town, just to give a sense of where they're at. So again, with these two projects, we're talking about bonding either, these two options, we're talking about bonding either roughly $103 or $133 million. Other projects in the pipeline, likely pipeline, are a police station. That would be about $30 million is one current estimate. The bonding for our various water projects, which is 3 different MWRA activities with our connections, plus the big PFAS filter that we're putting in. Those in total come out to about $29.5 million. And as we all know, we have the BHS project that's likely to hit here at some point too. So the point is, in terms of other bonded projects that we have coming up, this is on the order of 3 times as large as some of the other things that we're looking at. So that gives a little perspective on it. So my hope is that as the school committee and the SBC looks at these things, this will give a little context of what does it mean for the town's debt overall, and what does it mean in terms of individual household taxes, which I know in the forum was specifically, some people were asking that exact question. What does this mean to me? So this is to give you an idea. This is what it means to each of us, and hopefully that'll be useful input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is a very important discussion. I appreciate the work that has gone into it. I am concerned because I don't think we want to have rough order of magnitude numbers floating around without supporting documentation. We've hired a project manager who are professionals in this. We've hired a designer who are professionals in this. They are preparing that information. They are gathering that information. I know people are frustrated and want to know what's this going to cost us, how are we going to pay for it. Those are really important things that we, as the school building committee and as the school committee, need to work with the town to figure out how it's going to be financed. But I am concerned that we got these numbers you just put out that, you said that these are assumptions. You talked about one of your numbers, that there's not a lot of science in this. You made a lot of assumptions that may or may not be valuable when we get to the actual options, when we look at what these things are. I think the categories that you're looking at are valuable, certainly, and these are all things we need to be doing. But I'm not sure if it's really, I don't feel this is the proper meeting to have that conversation, and I'd really like to wait for the professionals that we've paid a lot of money to hire come back, and then if you want to look at their numbers and figure out, is there something they missed? And there are things that people can raise that didn't get raised before. So we definitely need to work with the town. We need to work with Ways and Means. We need we need to make a plan, and it needs to include the high school. The high school isn't even included in this spreadsheet, which worries me considerably. So that's, I appreciate the work that you went into. Thank you for bringing it to us. And I guess I will ask if any other school committee members want to make a comment before we move on.
If I could respond. So just to be clear, I'm not a financial neophyte at this. So I have worked with the town in validating bonding costs and bonding options. And I have also validated building cost assumptions I've made and have gotten buy-in that the 7% rider is a valid one. I think it's very useful to have these numbers out there. I would disagree with the characterization that it's order of magnitude. I think you'll find that these are reasonable estimates given the data that we have, which came from the architect in terms of building square foot. Okay. It's a fairly, I think it's fairly rigorous methodology that was applied here. And I think the mistake that's being made is that we've come this far without thinking about what the financials are. I'd say going this far and not having a rough idea of what these things cost is not a good approach, and that's why Ways and Means became involved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks, yes.
So first question I have is the Amesbury baseline of assumption. Why that school? Is it comparable? How?
So I think the interesting thing is if you look at the website that I referenced there, you'll see that it's a fairly detailed scatter plot of all the actual costs and projected costs on things that haven't been done yet. Amesbury just happens to be the most recent one.
Okay, how is it comparable to the school we're assuming we're going to build based on these options presented, right? Because you have a Fox Hill only, a combined school, and then replace both. So how does that correlate to the sizes we're building?
And the quick answer is it doesn't make a big difference. If you look at the plot, and I know that sounds odd. If you look at the plot, you'll see that the graph and the trend line of what the per square foot costs are is fairly independent of that fact. So whether it's a little bigger or a little smaller doesn't really change the per square foot cost that you see on that trend line.
Again, to that point, our educational program for that building hasn't been designed yet. So how do you correlate those costs to just a bare square footage number? How do you account for that delta?
And
these
I
numbers.
think the interesting thing is, again, if you look at that graph, you'll see that
I wasn't presented that graph in before this, so I'm trying to glean this information just based off
and I completely.
one sheet of paper. So
And if you could clarify which graph you're referring to?
Yes, if you look.
It's the MSBA graph of what their expected building costs are, correct?
If you take a look at the, on notes, the second note down
Okay.
on your sheet, you'll see the URL
Okay.
for the exact graph.
All
And
right.
So you can
And
type
can
that
we
in if
wrap
you'd like.
this up too? Because
Yep.
we have business to get to
Absolutely, just
also.
responding to a question.
Yep, no.
Okay.
yeah, and then just again, the other question I had was, you glazed over the high school cost of, hey, it's going to be included. There's estimates out there. It's $100 million. It's $50 million. So at what point do we hit a debt exclusion with your numbers projected here
So
as well?
I didn't put the high school in here because that's not part of this building project. I strictly mentioned it just in terms of the big picture. In terms of a debt exclusion, I think with these kind of numbers, we're hitting a debt exclusion to do the elementary school.
Okay, so to that point, in addition with no subtractions, to which you also glazed over, yeah, money could be taken away. It's possibly $133 per million added. But I think it's a little disingenuous, again, to put these numbers out without accounting for those things that are likely going to happen, and what's your schedule for that as well. I'll save these comments for later, but this is definitely something we need to readdress in the school building committee, because I take exception to a lot of this because it's information thrown out with very little context, and it's going to create a vacuum where people will fill that void with a lot of things and assumptions.
Which is why I put in all the references, so folks can validate that and understand the full context. I realized my time was limited,
Yeah.
so I couldn't get into that level of detail.
Okay, and Ms. Massardo?
I just have one. I agree with Martha that I'm disappointed that we're jumping the gun when we are paying some highly educated folks to do this for us. But the assumption that we build a same size Pine Glen as Fox Hill, I think is also inaccurate. First of all, the DSC is bigger than the lab program, and if we lose classrooms at the Fox Hill site, we're going to need to make up those classrooms on the Pine Glen site. So I think that's something that I've been thinking about a lot in these options, and I think that assumption of an 85,000 square foot replacement Pine Glen is undersizing that building.
I completely agree. There's certainly possible we'd want to make it larger, and it's easy enough to throw in any test case that you'd like to try out.
Okay. Mrs. Monaco?
Yeah. John, you've clearly hit on a hot button in the school committee.
I thought people might notice.
Yes. There's a lot of emotion involved in where we go and how we get there. And we may be paying people who do this all the time, but I have a feeling your numbers are right on because I know you pretty well. So thank you for producing this. I think to those of us that are not here to jump down your throat, it is probably extremely accurate, and it's good to have something to think about and look at.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bond?
No, and I was going to say the same thing. I think that, I agree, we do have numbers that are forthcoming in the future, but the problem is that there are many people attending these meetings that have no clue what it's going to mean to them. And I know it will come eventually, but at least now they have an idea of how it might affect them. It's not etched in stone. He's done his research. I also agree that, it could change, like you just said, if we build a slightly bigger Pine Glen. We haven't even talked about that yet. But I think it's at least a reference point for people to start so they can come in with educated questions when they attend our meetings. So I think it was just good to get the information out there. So thank you for putting that together.
Dr. Conti, do you have anything you'd like to add on this topic?
No, not right now. The town seems like it has a lot of building to do, Mr. Eiler, so So, yeah, looking out to the future makes sense, I guess. Anyway.
And I did see there was a hand in the audience. Mr. Sinesi, would you like to come up and comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So,
Can you say your name and?
thank you, Ms. Chair. Adam Sinesi. I'm a resident of Precinct 1. I live at Town Line Road. I just want to understand, I do appreciate that you offered some clarity on the planning tonight. But one thing that I know from being a town meeting member is that we have a 10-year plan. And in that 10-year plan, we have allocated some money towards Fox Hill. We've allocated towards the beginning of a framework for some improvements to the high school. I want to emphasize, and I can't overemphasize this enough, that our boilers and HVACs in the high school, I've been hearing this for years, are failing. At some point, they need to be addressed. And when I say they need to be addressed, it's probably within the next 5 years, or we're going to be sending our kids to high school, to a school that doesn't have functional heating system. I don't think that that's a good learning environment. I think that's frankly embarrassing as a community if we let it get to that point. Based on the presentation that I saw, I guess through the moderator, I'm asking, are you now reprioritizing Pine Glen to come in the timetable? Because to this point, there was nothing related to Pine Glen in a 10-year plan. Are you reprioritizing Pine Glen coming ahead of the high school? Because I just think we're letting the cart get ahead of the horse in having this conversation if we're not talking about it in conjunction with the high school too.
Mr. Eiler, would you like to reply briefly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Adam. The quick answer is no. The point of this was to show some options. The difference between those two options was to say, here's two ways that we could house roughly 640 students. It could be one large school or it could be two smaller schools. How does that compare? So it was really to get that comparison. I'm not suggesting that that would necessarily be the actual time frame that we'd want to go with. It's quite possible that the Pine Glen project would be much further out. I think one thing you'll also notice from this relative to the 10-year plan is that we probably have numbers that are too low in the 10-year plan for each of the various projects. And I think part of that is we're assuming a higher MSBA percentage than we're hearing now. So that was news to me. I will say that Ways and Means will be talking with the administration shortly to revamp the 10-year plan, talk about where the debt service will go, and what might be a possible debt exclusion scenario, and what are more realistic costs on various things. So you're absolutely right, that needs to be factored in here. Again, I didn't put the high school in this because the school building committee has nothing to do with the high school. That's a separate issue. But part of the reason I'm talking about this here is because it's not a school building committee issue. It is a school committee issue, though. So I wanted to get that out there. So, okay. Good question.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to make a comment? Okay. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Conti.
Again, Madam Chair, no matter what the scenario, we need Ways and Means to support
Yes,
the end.
yes.
So I'm glad that you guys are sort of invested early.
And as I said, I mean, these are all really important discussions to have. I think we're jumping the gun, and I appreciate all the work. And this will be some information we'll be able to use. I don't think we can make any decisions about about anything from it tonight. So it's another piece that we can use going forward. So thank you. All right. All right. So the next topic on the agenda is other announcements. Does anyone have any other announcements? I actually, when we got the report from Matt Shannon, I did get to go see a volleyball game and see Matt play, and they were fabulous, and I couldn't stay for the whole series of games, but we won the first two, so I figured it was a good time to leave. And I do hear great stuff about the rest of our sports teams going on, and I think later in the meeting we'll have more announcements about some of the end of the year events. Is that right, Dr. Conti? Okay, so we'll wait to do that. All right, so now we'll move on to our learning, equity, and thriving. And we have some visitors.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, it's become an annual visit, so I'd like to invite Krista Anderson up. And Ms. Anderson has, we've heard lots this year about our DECA students, and she and Ms. Trouvé and Krista, I'll let you do all the introductions, but we sent, I think, was it 20 students roughly?
Correct, yes.
To a national competition in Orlando, Florida, and as they've done all year, no matter what the competition, our students have just done outstanding. So I just wanted to bring some of those students in to be recognized, but also make sure that it's not by accident that this happens, and we have excellent leadership of the business curriculum and the DECA Club. So, Ms. Anderson, thank you for all that you are doing and leading and providing these opportunities for our students. So thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Dr. Conti and the members of the board. I'm here with also Danielle Truvey, who's on, as you can see online with me too, my coworker.
Ms. Truvey, I'm sorry I missed you. I didn't see you on the screen, so thank you.
And I'm sitting next to Ali Restivo, and I have two other students here. And just listening to you talk about elementary schools, it really pointed to Ms. Truvey and I that the students come in through the elementary schools, they learn other skills, and then when they come into the high school, they get to demonstrate them and really show what they can do. And we feel like in our business department, they really do project-based learning. The 3 students I have here today, and we had 13 compete with us in Florida, really are project-based learning students. They take all their skills that they've learned through the Burlington school system and then apply it to real-world type scenarios and then present them in a competition. So you're going to hear in a few moments from Andrew Pearl, who is a national finalist as well. And I'm going to just let the students talk so you can hear what they're doing. I know I've talked to a few people here about some challenges we've had. We have so many students who want to do business, take our business classes that we can't. In fact, they request our classes more than any other electives in the school. We can't even have all the students come into our classes. We've had to farm out some classes for next year, and we love having the students. I'm really sad to lose some like personal finance classes where we learn about present value of money and learn to do all these, all the things that you talk about. I have to move that class away, and we can't even teach all the students all the things that we want to. But anyways, that was the frustration we have. I think you need to hear some of that along with the good. I will now share Ali Restivo. She's a senior. I will then introduce Doc Shaw and Andrew Pearl, a sophomore and a junior respectively, and I'll let Ms. Truvey conclude for us.
Hi, like Ms. Anderson said, I'm Allie. I'm a senior, and I've been a DECA for 3 years now, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about my experience in project-based learning with DECA. My partner, who's also my sister, we competed a paper at States and at ICDC for DECA. Our paper was a 20-page paper that we wrote in a really great marketing management class, which was taught by Ms. Anderson, and we learned a lot of the fundamental skills of how to create a really good creative paper that will keep people informed and also talk about the topic that we chose. The paper was surrounded around the idea of how can we include hyper-personalization in certain businesses, and we decided to choose a business that it's a clinic in Burlington and Wakefield, HDPT, which is a physical therapy clinic, and we decided to write about them and talk about how we could hyper-personalize their business and talk about how we could add in a way to break the stigma of physical therapy and talk a lot about how we want to use it as injury prevention for office workers in Burlington specifically. And that paper got second at States, which we were kind of blown away by. We were really excited, and that sent us to ICDC, which it was such a great experience. It's something really that like you can, even though it's cliche, that you can really say it's like a once in a lifetime thing that you get to do that. It was great getting to meet so many other people there and getting to kind of share this one bond with 20,000 other kids that are so into business and using all these skills that we've learned from school over the years to connect and compete and really just show off like all of our like good skills and stuff like that. And kind of the process is we created a presentation based on our 20-page paper, and we presented that to a panel of judges, and they decide what they like about it, obviously what they don't like about it. And it was really exciting competing. And also just being in Florida was great too. Getting to be surrounded by warm weather, which wasn't familiar here for a while. And just gaining the experience of just, it feels like real life experience, getting to talk to so many different people, getting to like even just dress professionally, be professional there. It's definitely an experience I hope anybody in DECA gets to have the opportunity to do. And I really hope that this always continues, us being able to go on a trip like this and being able to do something that's so feels kind of out of the ordinary, because you would never think a 20-page paper would get you to go somewhere that's out of the state. But my experience has been nothing but positive. I've gained so many skills, teamwork, problem solving, communication, and that's something I'll definitely take. I'm going to Boston University in the fall, and they really loved the fact that I was part of such a great club that was so interactive and has me gaining so many more skills than I could have ever thought. So yeah, my experience has been nothing but the best. And also thanks to Ms. Anderson and Ms. Truby for really helping me out and supporting me all throughout the way, and also my sister too. So yeah.
That's
Thank you.
wonderful. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Are we going to hear from, Mr. Moran, you want to ask or comment, perhaps?
Where can we find a copy of the paper? It sounds really interesting. My niece just became a physical therapist, and
that's
physical
great.
therapy is a lifeline. It's just a fantastic tool if you use it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I have access to the paper. Ms. Anderson has access to it. We could share it anytime. Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
And I just want to introduce now my next two students, Doc Shaw and Andrew Pearl. I'll let them sit down and introduce themselves and explain their experience as well.
We'll get another chair.
That's okay.
Make sure you speak right into the microphone so people online can hear. Thank you.
Hello, board. My name is Andrew Pearl, and I'm a junior, by the way.
My name's Daksh. I'm a sophomore.
So the event that I did was quite different, because DECA has, I don't even know how many events they have. It's like it's just a whole ton of different events all ranging from different parts of the business world. But the event that I chose to do was the stock market game, where basically they gave us 100,000 simulated dollars, but it was spent in the real stock market, so it was following the real stock market. And that's how I qualified to go to nationals. And for nationals, I had to write a 10-page paper on my performance in the game, my rationale, and my different strategies. And then after you write the paper, you have to make a presentation to then present to a judge, which I ended up placing 14th nationally. And I don't think I could have done it without Miss Anderson. She helped me, because no one else from the school has done a stock market game except for this year, me and two other guys. So she was able to help me work through being one of the first to write this paper. And I think it was a really helpful experience, because I was able to have an almost real life business meeting, because the judge that you sit down with, it's not just presenting them information. You kind of have to immerse yourself as a part of the meeting. So my strategy was to actually pretend that he hired me to manage his $100,000 portfolio, and I introduced myself. He's my manager, and then at the end, I actually asked him for a raise as a part of the role play. And I think just being in that immersive situation brings me like a real life experience I can learn from, even though I'm only in high school.
Well, that's really excellent. Yes, Doc?
I also competed in project-based learning. I competed in what's known as SPE, which is school-based enterprise. And so like at BHS, we have a school store, and me and two other sophomores basically presented that. And each year, there's like a different aspect of business that you present. This year, it was promotion. And so all the different aspects of promotion, we tied into our presentation, and we presented that to two judges. And similar to Andrew, it's like pretending it's like a real world scenario, which is really helpful, and it's a good learning tool for me. And when making this, I noticed that I use a lot of my skills throughout my school career, especially in high school with Miss Anderson, Miss Truby teaching me a lot on how to present, how to make a effective slideshow. And I just feel like that's what made me and the other two kids really successful at this. We unfortunately didn't become a finalist. We got a pretty high score, and there's only one team for SPE from each school, and Miss Anderson, Miss Truby really helped us succeed. So I was like, thanks to them. And just about DECA, I feel like, Ali touched on this before, but I feel like it's just so inclusive. You see like thousands of kids at the International Career Development Conference. They all have this. They all went through district states and got there just like you did, and they have the same purpose. They have the same goal as you, and they're just like you. And so you get this like sense of community, the sense of belonging, and I feel like that's what DECA is really all about, like the education and the sense of community that builds.
That's great. Well, and obviously you've all learned very good presentation skills because you're all very articulate and clear about what you did and what the goals were and how important they are. Did you want to add something there, Andrew?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that since my freshman year, every open elective spot I've elected to do a business class, and I think DECA has really given me the opportunity to take all of the knowledge I've learned from Miss Truby and Miss Anderson and to showcase it and win awards for it. So, yeah.
Yes, Ms. Massardo.
Can you sum up the trademark Pearl Volatility Index?
So if I remember correctly, it was the recent fluctuations in the past month or so multiplied by the beta and then divided by the, what's it called, the average volume, but I could be wrong. I haven't used it since the competition. It's those three elements in one
So
of the
I can't use it right now? No.
Maybe later.
Okay. All right. Did you want to comment, Mr. Brooks?
Yeah, just so was it 37% earnings overall, full return on investment? You kind of buried that line there. I'm kind of interested to see like what was your total overall return on investment you got through your stocks that you invested in?
Well, I was started off with 100,000 and I ended up with I think 134,000 at the end of the 3-month period, and I think that 37% was the number which I beat the S&P 500 by.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I know Ms. Trouvé was also going to say something, but we can comment more afterward. Yes. If you would unmute.
We can hear real quiet.
I'm not real.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, there.
All right, so thank you again for having us. We do enjoy coming every year and getting to speak about our students' wonderful accomplishments. And these guys have really downplayed their accomplishments. I mean, a lot of them have worked hard all year, multiple years, writing papers, tracking stocks, working in the school store every day. So this really is a lot of time and commitment, and they really did earn what they've done. And we're very proud of how they performed. I mean, as a former DECA national competitor myself, I love being able to provide these opportunities to students because, as they can say, they really enjoy what they get to do. They get to display their skills, and they get to compete and kind of see value in what they're learning in the classroom every day. And we do more than just write papers. We also do host a lot of just student fun, community and team building, leadership building events with some of the other districts and surrounding towns. We ran quite a few community service events this year as well, raising close to, I believe it was $5,000 for the Jimmy Fund. So we love to see all the things that our students come up with. And this is pretty much a fully student-run club. So all these ideas come from the students. And Chris and I are constantly looking for new ways to engage and meet their interests. We love offering new classes. When they say they're involved in the stock market, all right, let's do a unit on stock market. We have students that are interested in real estate. And next year, we're actually very excited, and thanks to Dr. Conti, we'll be starting a dual enrollment program with LaSalle University, so the students can earn college credit. And we're just hoping to be able to service as many of the business students as we can. Like, they're kind of like our babies. A lot of these we've had 3, 4, 5 times in a row. I've had them in 7 electives, so we just want to make sure that we can get as many students in our classes as possible and continue on our great path of BHS DECA success.
Good. Excellent, thank you. Did anyone else want to comment? I wanted to actually ask two questions. One is, I assume that you've been in conversations with Mr. Sullivan and with Dr. Conti about all the students who are interested in signing up for business classes. That's good, because we want to make sure that there's an opportunity. Hint, hint, Dr. Conti. And my other question is, I know that we support your club with advisors, with some, I don't know, registration fees, and you probably work with Mr. Sullivan through his activity fund. And do you also do fundraising so you can travel, and what are the other ways that you are able to help make all this happen? Thank you, Mrs. Anderson.
So actually, we're 100% self-funded. We do everything ourselves. We've grown so much. We started off, when I came in 10 years ago, there were 8 people in DECA, now there's 200. And because of all this, we've had to really figure out how to spread out our fundraising. Unfortunately, our fundraising dollars when they're spread out over 200, don't make much of an impact. So we're trying to always find ways to fundraise. Could always use more help in that matter. And just recently, we had to, because it was so expensive for us to get hotel rooms and airfare, some of our expenses were having to be covered by students for nationals for the teachers. We try to cover that as much as we can. But anyways, that's one thing we're always looking forward to do. We do, as Ms. Truby mentioned, fundraise for charity. We're trying to find more creative ways to try to fundraise as well for the students. We always do have some money, but again, it's hard. A few $1,000s spread over 200 kids doesn't add to too much stuff. So that's always an ongoing challenge. And we're trying to work with businesses. In Burlington, we've got a great bunch of businesses here. So we're going to try to reach out to them a little bit more and see if we can try to do some better connections and support from them to help us with these endeavors.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone else, and then Dr. Conti, would you like to comment? Oh, and Ms. Monaco also wanted to comment.
I just want to say congratulations. You've done a great job. We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously, I echo that, and just want to, again, thank Ms. Anderson, Ms. Trouvé, thank you very much for all your time and efforts, and great job, and good luck at BU. We want to hear great things.
Yeah. Yes,
thank you.
And good luck at Nationals. And really, I can tell, I think you are proud of yourselves, and you should be. And your teachers are also to be commended incredibly, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, the next.
We were going to bring another group of students in, but scheduling this time of year is very challenging. So we have had the Tenacity Challenge students come before the school committee in prior years, and we'll continue to extend that invitation. For those of you who may not know, the Tenacity Challenge is an annual academic scholarship competition for teams of Latinx and African American students from urban and suburban high schools across Massachusetts. And these teams have 2 advisors, Ms. Crossman and Ms. Chang here at Burlington High School. They work just a tremendous amount of hours preparing students for the academic competition. And we just wanted to celebrate their success. So the information is in your packet.
I would like to add, I did go visit on the day of the Tenacity Challenge, where students from a number of different schools, I don't know if there were 10 or more, came to compete against each other in math, English and performing arts, art, visual art, and a social studies challenge around their theme for the year. So it was really remarkable to see these incredibly talented students, and including the students from our school who I got to meet before they went. And also, fortunately for the team, many of them were juniors and even sophomores, so they'll be able to build on their experience and successes from this year to next year. All right, so any other comments? And continue. Yeah.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just flip the next two agenda items, just the National Defense Industrial Association, we sent a group of students with Mr. Leroy Wong and Ms. Shireen Terrell. You've met Ms. Terrell before in terms of the computer science, and Burlington has a well-established computer science pathway, and Mr. Wong has a really great drone program that he has the students building drones and flying drones. We first met the organizers of the National Defense Industries Association New England branch at the Northeastern campus here in Burlington, where they included the students in a conference in the fall, and they invited us to their spring conference, which was held at Gillette Stadium. So, Bob, I shared a couple just the pictures from you for the committee, if you could pop them up by any chance. So here you go. So on the scoreboard, our students attended with students from Everett High School. Again, this is the New England Cyber Conference, and they had their own booth set up, and the interactions they had with the people in the business were great. I had, I think I had 2 Burlington residents who work in the field come up to me, and 2 recent graduates, and recent graduates are sort of within my tenure here, come up to me that they're all employed in these industries and came in and asked how they could help. And Mr. Brooks, I think they might be joining your efforts as mentors. And then the conversation I walked in on was there was a gentleman speaking to all of our students, and they were asking lots of questions, and again, it was a really engaging conversation. And afterwards, I found out what he did for a living was, I'm not sure the exact title, but he was basically an ethical hacker. What? So that's red teaming. So that's what he did, and he was telling the kids how he was basically paid to break into people's systems, and like it was just very intriguing. And I was like, boy, if I were in high school and hearing this person who could do this work, Mr. Moore, which is probably close to what you know more about than I do. I just thought it was great that the kids were exposed to all this. And then the National Defense Industries Association, again, donated $2,000 to our computer science program and drone program as for participating, and we're going to look to continue to. I think this was really only one of the first times that they've had students participate, and they just want to continue to do more of it. And so I just want to thank, again, our teachers, Mr. Leroy Wong and Ms. Shireen Terrell, and all their efforts, and our students for representing the community so well, and really trailblazing the participation of high school students in these conferences, because we are surrounded geographically by all of these incredible businesses and opportunities, and we just need to continue to expand those relationships. So I just wanted to brag a little bit about the students this time of year. So again, our DECA students, our Tenacity students, our computer science students are all accomplishing great things. And we're always very high school focused here, but remember we had the National History Day for, which was our middle school, and I will make sure that I get some elementary kids, and because their accomplishments are phenomenal as well. So I just want to make sure they come up, but very proud of that program.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, just trying to keep up as the events stack up this time of year. So I just wanted to make sure I highlighted some of the June events and make sure that we had coverage if we were going to have coverage. So on May 30th at 6:30, the senior athletic banquet is again at the auditorium. So Madam Chair, I believe you and I are going to cover that event and then come into the, actually it's not a school committee.
It's the school building committee.
The building committee, but we'll come into the building committee after we.
We'll run out and run in or something.
I'll try to keep my speech to half hour.
Okay.
So
Thank
that'll
you.
be all right. And again, June 1st is the Scholarship Awards Night. And again, Madam Chair, will you be covering that too?
I will be able to attend that, yes.
Okay, awesome. If you haven't been, that's a great evening to, the community is incredibly generous, usually providing $340,000 in scholarships to our seniors who, again, apply, and for whatever their next destination is on whatever journey they're taking. Again, Burlington just is an incredibly generous community in terms of that, and that is just, you can't escape it on that evening.
I'd like to add that because of the generosity of so many organizations and individuals and families, when my daughters were in high school, it took hours to get through the scholarship night. But I understand that they have streamlined the process, and it probably will be more like about an hour. So for those parents who are looking forward to going to scholarship night, and students, hopefully it won't be a lot longer than an hour.
This is the last school committee meeting prior to graduation, so that's Sunday, June 4th. I think you all received an invitation, and again, so please make sure you RSVP. It's, again, one of my favorite days, and so hopefully the weather will cooperate. It's much better outdoors than indoors. And then June 6th, we have the Junior Book Awards, again, in the high school cafeteria. And again, Madam Chair, I'm assuming you're covering that?
I will be attending, yes.
All right. So those are some of the upcoming events. And if anyone would like to participate or need more information, just please contact me, and I'll make sure that you have all the information you need to participate.
So I'd like to ask the question I usually, are all of these events posted on our website? I assume they're on the high school page, but perhaps we want to add them to our news. Is that something, Mr. Cunha, that would make sense to add these end-of-year senior events so that the community is aware of these dates? Is that something we'd like to do?
I will check with the webmaster, and I think we can get them up there if they're not up there.
Okay.
I think Master Calendar has them, but we'll check.
The master calendar. Okay, if they're on the master calendar that people can get from the main website, that's great. Thank you. All right. And Dr. Conti, moving right along to the policy section C.
We always start at I think it's such a high note with the kids, and then we drop it right down with policy. So we're going to, again, drop right down. Again, this is a second reading. I asked Mary Ann, so thank you, Mary Ann, to separate out section C from D. If you remember, there's no existing section C in our Burlington policy manual. So the policies that are being recommended are MASC policies. And again, we went through them quickly. A lot of these have to do with the administration and performance of the administration. I didn't see anything that we really weren't doing already. So my recommendation is to adopt section C unless anyone has any additions or adds they'd like to make, but adopt as a second reading. And again, we can always make adjustments moving forward, but again, would suggest the board make a motion to approve section C, general school administration, as a second reading.
I invite a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on section C tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The chair votes aye. That's 500. The next is policy section D, and I know there were a few adjustments that were recommended, and are you going to review those? Well, let me say, the adjustments, is there people on the committee who'd like to review what the adjustments that are being recommended are? Should we go through them one at a time, or do people feel they've had enough backup material and don't need to go through them all? What would people prefer?
I think we should go through them.
Okay. So, Dr. Conti, would you be willing to do that,
Yeah, so
please?
again,
Thank you.
section D was approved as a first reading. In between last meeting. In this meeting, I've gotten some feedback on some languages. There was some sections where the language needed to be customized for Burlington, and I think we've gone through and have done that. We've gone through all the policies. I think I've already articulated where MASC recommended they're making a choice between the Burlington policy and the MASC policy. But we had a couple decisions to make, so I'll go through those again. So for first policy, which is DA, fiscal management goals, the MASC recommended a school committee choice. They thought either policy was fine, the Burlington policy or the MASC policy. So I'm not sure if the school committee had a strong opinion on either one.
Is there anyone who would like to recommend?
And again, my thinking is if there's no real difference, that we should just stick with the Burlington language, if that seems to make sense to people. But again, I just wanted to say that, so that would be my recommendation.
Okay, Mrs. Monaco?
Which one is in what was sent out?
They're both in there. First one is Burlington, the second one is MASC. For, at least for DA.
I'll try to keep some sort of semblance of, so this was the Burlington.
Yeah, but.
Did I might not have sent them to you in the proper.
In the merged document, it has the Burlington one first, and then the second one is the MASC version.
And you're recommending which?
The Burlington one, again, where there's a choice, I'm just sort of recommending we stick with local language, but it would be reaffirmed, so it would be reaffirmed for 2020, it would be reaffirmed with the date of tonight.
Which policy letters?
This is DA, fiscal management.
Okay, I see.
And then DB, I'm going to make the same, that's the annual budget. Again, MASC recommended that would be a school choice as well, so I'm going to recommend the Burlington policy for that too. So that is DB. And then the others I went through, we took out any that were outdated and unnecessary, unless any of the committee wanted me to put them back in, but I didn't hear that from folks. What I did hear is for policy DFC.
Yeah, that's the one with the notes.
Yep. So DFC, let me get there. All right, they wanted us to keep the Burlington, but the feedback I got is the second number 3 does not align with the current custodial contract. We need language that aligns with the contract. So that was the feedback. So this was the proposed number 3 was, again, I'm sort of reading it out loud, I apologize, replace current number 3, which reads, cancellation must be made at least 24 hours prior to the event, or custodial fees of 2 hours per person will be charged, and replace it with the following, must be made at least 24 hours prior to the event, or the full amount of the custodial fees scheduled for the event will be charged. That follows our custodial contract. So I'd like to make that suggested edit for DFC.
And, okay, yep, good.
Okay. Then DGA, we also got some feedback. And again, MASC thought DGA should reflect what Burlington's practices are. So again, if the committee prefers to continue the current practice of all members reviewing and approving the warrant, which I would recommend, the recommended language in the MSA policy for this section should be amended to reflect that possible proposed language change. Again, this is what we're proposing. to reflect this feedback.
So in the document that we're looking for, it's the, in italics at the bottom of that first page.
That is correct, Madam Chair. So again, the review and approval of all warrants as correct and approved for payment will be by vote of the committee during public meeting. The committee also has the option to designate by roll call a single member responsible for review and approval of all warrants as correct and approved for payment. A record of such approval to be made available for the next regular committee agenda. Such designation, if elected, does not limit the responsibility of each member. The municipal treasurer, who also serves as the school department treasurer, signs all checks drawn against school department funds. No other signature is valid.
So if I could just add, there are school districts that designate one person to review the warrants. Our practice is that we all do, and I don't hear any interest in changing that, so I support this language that would clarify what we do. Ms. Massardo, did you want to add?
I want to hop back.
Okay.
DBC.
Okay, can we just,
Yep, that's
before we
what-
do,
yep.
so is that, are we okay with DGA with this new proposed language that confirms our current practice? Okay. Yep, okay. And you want to go back to which?
DBC.
DBC.
Which did we choose on that one?
DBC, budget deadlines and schedules?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Burlington.
Yep.
The Burlington.
Okay.
That was, the recommended was to stick with Burlington.
Okay. That one has the select men reference.
Oh, that's right. We were going
Yeah.
to change all those to select board.
Yes.
Okay.
That is in my notes as well, Ms. Massardo.
Okay,
so-
and DBD also says selectmen.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, what's the next one?
The next one is DI. Fiscal accounting and reporting. So what we were going to do is insert the first paragraph of the MASC policy onto the Burlington policy, and then we're also going to change the first sentence of the third paragraph should read, instead of from September through June, we're going to say from October through June.
Why don't we make it October through July so that we get a wrap-up, whether we get it anyway?
We're going to,
Ms. Kasha, if you could comment on that? Yeah.
So it says June, because June 30th is through the end of the fiscal year. So that would be like the following year.
No, okay, so what I'm thinking of is in July, when things finally come to an end, a year-end update.
Yeah, so like in June's like final numbers usually get presented like the following month anyways.
Okay.
Looking at Mr. Island,
Yeah.
because he's the one who initiated this policy in the first place.
Actually, so could you read the words? I don't have the whole thing in front of me, but is it reporting from October through June, or is it reporting on October through June? On the report of October through the report of June? How is it worded?
This is from September through June.
It just says from.
The school committee will receive financial statements.
We'll receive the statements from October through June, so that we're receiving the report from June, even if it's in July. Does that work for you?
again, let me just read the whole policy,
Okay.
Madam Chair, if that's okay with you?
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to take, the superintendent will be ultimately responsible for receiving and properly accounting for all funds of the school district, maintaining effective internal control so as to assure the effectiveness and efficiency of operations, adequate safeguarding of property, assurance of expenditures in accordance with programs under which revenues are received, and compliance with applicable laws and regulations. So that's the MASC policy that we're sticking on top of. The accounting system will be used, the accounting system used will conform with state requirements into good accounting practices, provide for the appropriate separation of accounts, funds, and special monies. And then the paragraph starts from September through June, and what we'd like to do is change that from October,
Why?
because we're not done hiring typically, and it's the start of the year, and we're kind of all over the place till October. It's just not going to be very accurate or valid, and we'd rather put our effort into putting the money in the right places to make sure that we can report it better. So again, we're not even placing the people in their right spots until, probably until September anyway, because even if we hire during the summer, anyway, it's very volatile until October, so I think that's why we're asking. So then the last paragraph would read, from October through June, the school committee will receive monthly financial statements from the superintendent or designee showing the financial condition of the school department. Financial statements shall, at a minimum, include actual amounts expensed versus budget for both a month and year-to-date, along with a forecast of expected spending for the remainder of the year. Such other financial statements as may be determined necessary by either the committee or the administration will be presented as found desirable. So again, that would be DI as...
DI only? So for DI only, Mrs. Monaco, is there anyone who is not comfortable with the wording as Dr. Conti just reported it? No. Okay, so we don't need to pull that out separately. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. DJE is next. So DJE is their procurement requirements. And we'd like, the suggestion is that we got, again, after the first reading, is to change the language to dollar amounts in compliance with the thresholds set by the Office of the Inspector General.
If I could add to this, because I had this conversation with Ms. Kasha, and MSC was recommending we wait because the state's going to change the numbers, but the numbers we have now are lower than what the state requires now, so I didn't think it made sense to keep the numbers we have now. It would create more work for all of us. So this way, any time that the regulations change, our policy says that we would do this in compliance with the dollar threshold set by the Office of the Inspector General. So that felt like it created flexibility for the future. So that's what this change is about. Any comments or questions on that? Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Dr. Conti?
Okay. DK.
Madam Chair, if I may just go back to that 1 second, sorry.
Sure. Which
so
one?
it's compliance binding language in this, as it's written. So you can say in compliance, but that still gives you wiggle room to go over, above, or below, right? So what is the binding language to say we will adhere to that dollar amount, no more?
Well, I'm going to let Ms. Kasha answer that. The word thresholds, but go ahead, if you could,
So
please.
there's what the cutoffs are that the OIG issues. There's no wiggle room on those. So like if they say it's 50,000, I don't get to say if it's
I understand that, but
$49,999. I'm not going to do it.
So when we say compliance, that's saying it's binding language?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on this one? Okay.
DKC was suggesting that we keep Burlington, but we eliminate number 1, which is travel by school committee members must have prior approval of the school committee. So we would eliminate number 1, so we just have 1 through 4.
And if I remember correctly, number 4 includes any travel outside the state, so school committee travel outside the state would still be under this policy. Is that? Yeah. And it's the current number 5, that's right. But if we eliminate number 1, it would become number 4. Yeah.
That is correct, Madam Chair. I'll just read that. Any out-of-state travel requires prior school committee approval. If circumstances prevent prior approval by the school committee, the superintendent or responsible budget manager may seek approval from the school committee chair to be followed up with the school committee at its next meeting. So again, every once in a while, an athletic team will qualify for a New England event, and I would typically give them approval and then come back to the school committee afterwards, something like that. So that was the proposed changes for DKC, again, was to eliminate number 1 and to move forward. The last change was DN, which was disposal of furniture and textbooks. And they wanted to leave the Burlington policy with one addition is to, we want to add attempt to recycle when possible. And so we would add that to the policy.
This is another selectmen policy.
You rewrote that language. It's on the next
Okay.
page. Okay, I'm sorry.
This is the only other one, yeah.
That's another select board.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you. I will make sure that gets happen. I did. Yeah, again, I haven't seen the final draft yet, but I will make sure that that is done. So Nicole did rewrite this language for DN. So I think the new language was in your packet, but I'll read it. MGL Chapter 30B, is that the one? Uniform Procurement Act governs how school districts dispose of surplus supplies. The rules apply to all tangible surplus supplies with a resale or salvage value, including motor vehicles, machinery, computer equipment, furniture, and other materials and supplies. Disposal of real property is governed separately. All purchases made through the general operating budget, grants, revolving funds, or other public funds must abide by the district's procedures on the disposition of surplus property. For any goods that are determined through the district procedure process to be of no value, the district will attempt to recycle when possible. So that's the new DN.
Are there any, is that the last one, Dr. Conte?
That is the last one.
Okay, are there any comments on any of the Section D policies? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve the policies as discussed.
So, a second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The chair votes aye, and that's 5-0-0. I just want to acknowledge that we just accomplished a lot with Section C and Section D, and it's a good
Can I ask?
progress. Yes, Ms.
For the way they did the first ones, where they were actually merged for the second reading, was much more useful, I think. I don't know if the MASC did that, or
Yes.
we did that. Okay. So the first A and B, we had the red line version of like the merge.
Absolutely,
Okay.
we can wait till we get the merged versions, and we can include that if that's what the committee finds easier, that's fine. And what I'll probably do for Section D, I mean, Section C, we didn't merge anything, but
No,
for
no,
Section
I mean,
D-
this
for
is
E
fine,
going
but I'm talking
forward.
about E, F, G, I don't know, how, do we go to Z? I don't know.
No,
Okay.
I have
Okay.
E ready to go, but we
Okay.
want to do two at a time. Mary Ann, we haven't gotten F or G yet. As we get into the student ones, they're longer, so we
Okay,
might
yeah.
even piece those out a little bit differently. But, Ms. Pessar, I think that's fine. I just need to wait for the merged document to get returned, and we can just put it on the agenda once we receive the redlined document, I think would be fine.
So, Dr. Conti, I would like to hope that we can just get Section E. If Section E has been done,
Yes.
that we could perhaps get that for our next meeting, so we can move forward, especially where they're longer. If you know, for our first reading, you said it might be available, so I want to continue if that's possible. If it works out, and you'll add that, I think it'd be valuable.
Yes, I have Section E done with notes for suggested changes. I'm just not sure those suggested changes have been merged yet. So we
Okay.
can certainly do a first reading. And then I'm hoping by the time we have our second meeting, we'll have the merged document, and then you can review from there. So
Great, thank you.
try to keep the momentum going.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the suggestion. I know this is it's not exciting, but it's important. Madam Chair, may I move to the equity audit update?
Please do, thank you.
Was there a vote? Did I miss the vote?
We voted.
Okay, excellent, sorry. I'm losing my head. All right. So I gave you a brief timeline. We're still working at a end of June. I keep asking the auditors, are we still on for the end of June? Are we still on for the end of June? And they're telling me they are on. I think the survey, our response rate has been positive. I think we have close to 500 student responses. And the auditors are going to be in the district at the middle school and the high school on Thursday. So they'll be doing their student conversations, and then they're going to meet with the administration on June 6th. And then they have all of the quantitative data that they requested. They have copies of policies, handbooks, and again, they're still on track for an end of June product for us to look at. So I don't have much to add other than that, except for the auditors have been very responsive, and Rosemary D'Souza has been a great resource for them and has really gotten them all the information that they've asked for. So I want to thank Rosemary, and like I said, looking forward might be the wrong word, but I want to have this information back so we can look at it and move forward.
Are there any comments? Okay. I have a question. I don't really see anything in this summary of work done to date on quantitative data. And I believe that there's information we have on our dashboards or our Aspen or the Mrs. Miliano's office, which might give us information about number of students enrolled in various kinds of courses, and absentee rates and suspension rates and discipline rates and graduation rates. And I am hoping that this equity audit will include that kind of quantitative data. So have you heard from them about them doing any of that?
I'm sorry, and if I misspoke, I said they've started their audit with us from quantitative data. So they presented a list of documents and information that they wanted to see, and they've received that first, and then they shaped the survey and the focus groups after the quantitative data. So, Madam Chair, I will get you the list of information that they asked for. And again, I don't think I need to replicate the information, but I'll get you the questions that they asked.
Thank you.
And that was how they initiated the process with the district.
That's excellent to hear. Thank you very much. All right, so I guess we are on to the next topic.
Oh, my favorite topic.
Yes. So for those of you who are not looking at the agenda, the next topic is the superintendent evaluation and the forms. This is a process we will be beginning now and finishing before the end of the year. Shall I give a brief review, Dr. Conti, or you? We, all 5 members of the school committee get these forms, and if we feel that we've known his work long enough, we will complete them. They are set in, they're standardized by the State Department of Education, the Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, and we will have a rubric to complete, and I probably can't remember the 4 sections by heart, but they're the same 4 sections that we look at in our plans for success. So there's learning, equity, facilities, and something about all the staff supervision you do, right? So anyway, it's generally those 4 categories, and we will be each evaluating them individually, and then after you've completed them, I, as the chair this year, will receive all of your evaluations, and I will create a summary evaluation that we will present. I think it's at the last meeting in June. Does that sound right, Dr. Conti?
Yes.
And that will be your formal evaluation for the year. And in addition to that, you have also put out a survey, yes? So you want you to talk about that part? No?
Sure. Every year, typically in May, I put out a community survey for students, staff, anyone in the community. They can comment on different aspects of leadership, district direction, and Once we close the survey, it's anonymous. I give those results to the committee, so you all can look at what people are saying. And again, as one aspect of what's going on, I've done that for, this will be year 15 at this point now. So the feedback I got, it was the initial survey I did for the first 14 years was too long, so we abbreviated it. And so it's just a way to get more feedback from the folks that I serve. So you're welcome to do with that information as you see fit, but I do read it, and I do try to respond to constructive feedback that I get. And again, the evaluation process is important, and my evaluation by regulation is public, so I think that's just how this process goes forward. Typically, it's like a writing assignment, and we try to simplify it as much as possible. So you also see the 3-year district improvement plan and my goals that are there, so you can sort of, your comments can be in relation to that. I also think because the chair has to compile lots of different pieces, if the June meeting is June, what's that Monday? We don't even have the Tuesday.
We're going to, yeah, our
22nd?
No, it's going to be Monday, June 26th will be our last.
So, Madam Chair, you may want to give your colleagues a deadline.
Yeah.
So maybe give yourself a couple weeks.
Yeah. So everyone did get the forms already, and so if folks in our packet for the meeting, or
Yeah, they were in the
email?
packet. Can we,
Check
they
again,
exist
if
in
not,
PDF?
Check again.
Yeah,
Earl.
no, I saw the attachment, but I didn't open it to see the forms.
Okay.
Do they-
And I have a question. I don't know who would be able to do this, but the forms as they showed up are in horizontal form, which makes it really hard to use on the computer. And I'm wondering if there's a way to get a document either from DESE or whatever that would allow us to use them. The documents are like this.
Does
you
a
know?
PDF exist somewhere? Like, where did you get them? I mean, the original PDF, I guess. Like, these are clearly scanned pieces of paper.
Yeah,
I'd like a fillable
Is there-
PDF as well.
They'd be on the DESE website.
Okay, we can
get you all
find that, okay.
all the computer-based documents.
Okay, because, yeah, in the past, they've been available as working documents online so that we can enter and change what we enter, and then eventually, when we're ready, print the final. You used Adobe Pro, okay, well, I'm not familiar with that, but hopefully there'll be a way to, would you look into that, Ms. Fabry? Thank you. And see, and if not, maybe it's just available, we could all look it up. But if somebody finds it and wants to send me the link, I'd appreciate that. Yes, Mrs. Monaco?
This is going back to the equity audit, is that all right?
Oh, let me just finish
Yeah.
one more thing. So I would like, could people get me your evaluations by, say, our first meeting in June, on June 13th? Is that realistic for folks? Okay, thank you. All right, and question, anything else on the evaluation and the forms? Okay, yes, Ms. Monaco, something about the equity audit.
Yeah, I just wanted to read a notice, join CPAC virtually on May 30th, 6:30 to 7. They're seeking 8 to 10 caregivers to join their conversation with the firm conducting Burlington's equity audit. It's at burlingtoncpac@gmail.com. And sounds like an interesting way to be part of the equity audit.
Is there, I assume that the CPAC is publicizing that. Are there any other
Yeah.
specific groups that we want to publicize that to? Or is it really, it's through the CPAC,
Right,
right?
that's
Through
the
their
one I'm
members?
aware of.
Okay, good.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. All right, moving on to facilities and finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had some late additions, so I just want to make sure that we cover some changes that the Department of Ed has made in regards to food service procurement. So if you don't mind, Madam Chair, if we could, before we get to the Fox Hill High School, Pine Glen, and the Community Athletic Advisory Committee, if we could just talk about the food services procurement. Again, the state made this change, and we needed to talk about it tonight publicly if we were to get ahead of the RFP process. So
Good.
again, I
Please go ahead.
apologize for that.
Well, it's on the agenda.
So we'll go from there. Nicole, you want to give some background, and
Sure.
that would be great.
So since we conducted our mid-year request for proposals for a food service management company, as Dr. Conti mentioned, Mass DESE has issued new guidelines that they're requiring districts to use, which is basically like a universal like RFP. And so we have to go back out to bid and re-advertise for a food service management company, as they're only approving like our current contract through June 30th of '23 with no renewals. And they also are holding like the same standard to another district that was sort of in the same boat that went out mid-year. And then, of course, anyone else that had contracts that ended that needed to go back out. So there was nothing like specifically wrong with ours. They're just saying that with their new guidelines, they're going to want us to go back out. So the new template's basically like a 70-page locked PDF that only permits access to like certain form fields in there. So like check boxes to say, you know, if like our guaranteed return for the contract is going to be a break even, a surplus, or if like we're willing to take on a deficit of some amount. So it's really limited in like the options that they're allowing us to cater to the district. And from my understanding and conversations with them, their goal in like requiring everyone to use this is to sort of just develop like a streamlined process and really just to level the playing fields for districts, because they were saying that they felt like a lot of the contracts that sort of come through their office didn't always have like the districts didn't always have the upper hand in. So I think that this is trying to help provide some additional oversight to districts operating under these contracts too. So I think that if there's other things that like the committee wants to see like happen within the program, like the food waste and plastic use, that it would be recommended that the committee like adopt policies that the program would just then be like required to follow, be that like an in-house management or food service management company, whatever, however we decide to proceed. So I actually have a meeting on Friday with the state to go over some other stuff about the program. So I'm hoping to be able to like finalize an RFP and submit to DESE for approval if that's the direction that the committee wants to continue in.
Question, yes, Ms. Bond.
So again, if we're talking about, you said we have to add policies for plastic, so we can't put any of that in the contract. So do we now have to put together some subcommittees so that we can agree to a policy, or are we going to discuss that? What's the process for us to state those things and put them in a policy? Where are we going to do that and when?
I mean, I think you guys are able to create policies like whenever you see fit. I think before we went out would like the people responding would understand like what we're looking for. But even like after the fact, like it's still enforceable if it's something that you guys pass.
That's what I'm trying to determine, if we have to get these policies done before it goes out to bid, or we can throw it in after. And just, I would think they want to be aware of some of this if you're putting something out to bid.
Right. In our conversations, the state is convinced that if they take more control over the RFP process for things like food services and transportation, that districts will benefit. So that's kind of what the hope is, and we'll see if that's the case. They're not particularly sensitive to the implementation cost of change. So one of the reasons we're we want to get the RFP out and get this process working is it's obviously going to be June soon. I'd like to have this all settled and not have it settled, let me say, for the start of the school year is sort of the timing here. And the DESE has said that they would, even given their new process, they believe that we can have this out and responses back and bid according to their new rules and have this in place by the fall, which was my concern. If we want to overlay policy, I think that's great. I just want to make sure we have menus and food ready for September.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Brooks?
Just because DESE suggested we have to follow.
Yeah.
Why?
They'll withhold our federal reimbursements until we comply.
Okay, so if we don't like something that's in their boilerplate RFP, how do we go about changing that?
I mean, I guess if there was something, we could ask them, but there's between what we put out last time and what like they're suggesting, there's nothing that really conflicts with it from my review of it.
I wasn't part of that, so
Yeah.
I'm just trying to ask the questions because I want to be informed before I make a decision.
Mr. Brooks, as a general rule, I wouldn't have any problem deviating from a rule if I thought it was to benefit Burlington, if we could. And so that's, but I think this was, we spoke to everyone we possibly could, and this was there was no wiggle room here with this type of procurement. So, again, my concern was more of the timing, and the state is providing us resources to help us to get through the process.
No, acknowledge all. It just looks like it kind of puts us in some very tight guardrails. So if we wanted to make changes, it's going to be a little more difficult.
Yes, Ms. Bond?
Are we able to get a copy of it so we can look at it?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Massardo?
So just to clarify, they're doing this with these food vendors and transportation vendors because districts, including us in some instances, feel there's limited competition or limited responses to the bids that we put out. So they're structuring these so that the upper hand hopefully lies with the district and not with these semi-monopolistic vendor companies.
That's part of it, yes.
Okay.
All right. Yes, Ms. Monaco?
Yeah, I'd like to know what the timing is. When do you want to put it out? And when do you expect to get responses?
So we have to advertise for a 4-week period. And basically, once I fill in all the check boxes to cater towards what we had gone out for before, I just need to send it to DESE for approval, which I think their turnaround time on that is going to be much quicker, given that there's only limited fields that I could possibly change that they'd have to review.
Okay. So I have a few concerns. I'm not sure it relates to the RFP itself, but do they have anything in there about waste or plastic use or anything like that?
I didn't see anything specific on those two topics.
All right, so this is another one of those topics where there are a lot of opinions floating around. And what I'm seeing and being told and getting pictures of is that there's a lot of waste. And also that everything is packaged in plastic. So every sandwich is in a, cute little plastic thing. And so you make the sandwich, and with all of these schools, you're using, an awful lot of plastic containers every day, which maybe we could make a policy about. But I think that's a definite problem, and if it was something that would go in the RFP, then it should. And then on the same topic, but sort of a stretch, we have some numbers here about participation. I wonder if at the next meeting, hopefully at the next meeting, unless it's too soon, if we could have this data analyzed, to have like percentages of increase in participation. I believe there's a graph in existence somewhere that someone told me about. And also, could we have a presentation on the financials of where we were when we started, what's come in reimbursement, what's gone out, and like, just so we can see the whole picture and be able to judge whether or not this is a financially sound way to go. I would just like to be able to study that and understand it and not have a head full of questions about it.
Dr. Conti?
Madam Chair, Mrs. Monaco, we can certainly do all of that. But Nicole, my understanding is with the contract that we've signed, we sort of have predicted what the year end is going to be already, that we know the return that we're going to get, and if there's a loss, that loss is borne by the management company, not by the district. Is that correct? I just want to make
Yes,
sure. We can still look at all of those, participation and everything else like that. Waste, Mrs. Monaco, I'll have to figure out how we measure that. I'm not sure we do measure that, Bob, but we'll talk about that. But the financial piece of it is, the analysis is going to be very different than what we've done. Is that, I just want to make sure.
Our current contract, which covered, I think, 66 days, we're guaranteed a return of $46,000, 967. But also, like, I know at the beginning of the year, we carried like a large balance, which was like a combination of, I guess, a bunch of things, with like higher reimbursements during COVID and some supply chain assistance funding that we received. However, we are only able to carry over like 3 months of average expenditures in that fund, which for us is about $300,000. So like, outside of like our regular operating expenses under the contract, we are working with the state on like a spend down plan so that we can be in compliance with that mandate, which is the spend down plan. It was just for expenses like limited to the food service program. So like just investing in like updating equipment and those sorts of things.
No, I understand. I'll be more specific. Relative to waste, I wonder if there's a way to mitigate it, and also if there's a way to take any of the food that is, I'm not sure exactly how to phrase it, but instead of throwing it out, giving it away. Then relative to the money, what I'm really looking for is whether or not we, and to what extent, we benefit or have benefited in this particular 6-month period, or since March through the end of the school year, whether or not we have come out ahead or behind where we would have been with certain assumptions, maybe that we spent more on food ourselves if we'd done it ourselves. But I really want to see, I know what the guarantees are, I know what the contract says, but I want to see what the actual dollars look like. What came in reimbursements, what went out in costs, where it went. And before I forget, one of the things that I just can't get out of my head is those plastic-lined steamer pans. I hope Martha is in agreement with me that when we do a policy on plastic, we will not have any plastic-lined pans, because the thought of it just makes me crazy. And there is also, the word on the street is that there's already $250,000 contracted for changes to the high school cafeteria, and that those changes are being made by the current food service company. And if that's the case, I would like some detail on that, maybe the next meeting.
Do you have any information right now on that, Ms. Kasha, or do you want to?
We've discussed with them that, like, we need to implement, like, a spend down plan, but we haven't actually, I haven't signed anything committing to actual purchases as of today.
So anyone else have questions? So I'm wondering, we did pass a food waste policy about, trying to address not throwing the food away. And so that's in place now. I don't know that we have a plastics policy, and there's multiple pieces of plastics, or issues to address. But I'm wondering, Dr. Conti, if you would be willing to talk to Mrs. Presser and ask her if there is, are there any template plastics policies? Because you're telling us that we could do it after we hired a new company, but if we are ready and want to do it before we hire a new company or the same one, whatever, that would be helpful. And I'm guessing if MASC doesn't have a template, I'm sure there are other towns that do. So we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel or even have a committee necessarily. Maybe we would want to, but.
What is the food waste policy saying? Is it being followed?
We are working on it.
What does it say?
I forget the exact wording, and it was left so that it wasn't required because people didn't want it to be required if it couldn't be done. Food composting is a difficult process, but
that's different. Yeah.
And there are also so there's food composting, and there's also like giving away food that's not gone bad, and that's a process also, and I, as you know, have been pushing for this, but also where our cafeteria workers have been asked to do so many new things and so many new tasks, it didn't feel like the right time to push that issue right now. Although in the long run, those are goals that I have personally, but obviously we need to do it as a district. But that's where it is now. And the hope is that the kitchens will be able to do the composting because it's a limited number of people who are throwing away food anyways, or then throw it in the compost bin instead of in this bin. And I also know that the students from the AP Environmental Science class, who are not seniors, are working on projects. And they're working on projects about composting. And so I'm hopeful that they might come and present to us before the end of the school year. But even if they don't, that they may have educational materials available for them to help high school students learn how to do composting of their food and their lunches, so to speak, or breakfast, whatever. So that's what I know. So, Ms. Monaco?
Yeah, I was approaching it differently. I was approaching it from not preparing more food than we need. But I understand.
Yep.
And, food waste is an issue, but I am under the impression that in some instances, a lot of food is prepared and then thrown out. And maybe that's getting better because some changes have been made. So, that's good, but I think it's something that we need to talk about, look at, that, the plastics, and seriously, the finances of it. I want to know if we're losing $500,000 a year by having a food service company, or if we're making $90,000 because we'd be, in the hole. I want to know those things. So that's my goal, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Cuna, would you like to comment?
Please, thank you through the chair. I just wanted to comment on the food waste. Not eliminated, definitely it's something that we are working on to, in the back of the house, work on composting food. In the kitchen itself, we have adjusted the schedule and gone back to a food count. When we previously started this management contract, we removed the food count, so we were preparing a different number of foods. Now, by having a food count, we're making less food, because we're pretty close to the accurate numbers that we need for that. So again, we can get better, but I just wanted the committee to know that we are working on that.
And I also wanted to add that there are also, like, milk that doesn't get used or fruit that doesn't get used. There are ways to donate that food to food pantries and such, but it also requires somebody to organize it and a lot of work. And I want to acknowledge that our cafeteria workers are doing a yeoman's job. I don't like that term anymore. A wonderful job of trying to keep up with this. I know I heard we were able to hire, I think, 2 of the 5 positions that we've hired 3 of the positions that we posted. We do have 2 others. We posted 5. You know, there's still a lot of people working long hours, and we really do, I want to say out loud that we really do appreciate it. And Dr. Conti, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to make sure a participation graph and a financial graph of what came in as reimbursements and what went out, and you just want more detail, Mrs. Monaco, is what I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you're asking for.
I want to know what the bills are.
Got it.
What we've taken in, what we've paid out, the whole thing.
Madam Chair, if I may, are we correlating this to past performance and looking at the last 6 months? Because I think that's what we're saying, but we haven't said it yet. So you want to look at the previous few months or last year
I want to
and correlate it to the 6 months?
With the food service company.
Correct, and I think we should gauge that against past performance instead of just taking a myopic look at one data point.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Is that okay, Ms. Kasha? And I also have a question about the chart we got, which is the day that the new food service management company, Whitson's, came in and started? Was it
March 6th.
March 6th? That's what I thought, but I wanted to be sure. And then, okay. So, are there any other questions about the presentation on the food service RFP that's going to go out? Are there any other comments on all of this other discussion we've just had? Okay. So if we can move on, Dr. Conti?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. What's next on your agenda?
RFT, Marcia Simon's air conditioning.
We actually solved that today internally, so we believe we can get the air conditioner fixed without an RFT, so
That's good.
thank you for Bob for pushing the vendor, and thank you for Nicole for figuring out how to pay for it. So, Bob, just without getting into detail, and again, it's the chiller, is that what I'm supposed to say?
Mr. Cunha, would you like to explain what happened for the rest of us?
Simply, yes. We shut down the air conditioning when it's cold, and then we do a startup before the weather gets warm. We're at that warm startup phase now. That's when we go through and have a company come in along with our crews to not only service all the machines, clean coils, so forth. Also, too, we're required to do a 3-year test, which prompted this conversation tonight. The 3-year test on the chiller has many tubes that run through it for cooling, and a lot of the tubes are thin wall damaged or holed. So the actual chiller is not as efficient as it could be, and catastrophic failure is something that we're trying to avoid. A system like this could be upwards of $1 million plus if it was to go. So maintenance in this category or pricing is definitely something well worth it to extend the life of the equipment.
So can you explain what we were able to get it maintained and fixed so that those thin tubes are replaced or something?
We haven't done it yet, but we were able to discuss that today, and not knowing, again, and what the price was from the vendor and how much it was going to cost us and what we had for internal funds. That's why we put this topic on here, to make sure if it was going to be over, that we could look for additional funding. But it looks like we won't have to do that and can cover it in-house. That's buying a 380-tube compressor unit for inside the chiller itself, and the labor to install that, and then test it, treat the water, and get the system up and running. This one chiller is the cooling tower for the whole entire middle school. So without that, the middle school itself has no air conditioning. We do plan to run 2 summer programs, plus any additional rec department programs that are in there during the summer. So not only is it necessary for the end of the school year, the summer, and then the warm weather that starts in August and September as well.
Okay, thank you. Are there
Do we have
further
an
questions?
ETA? Do you have an ETA on that? This fix?
Once we sign the agreement, I'm told 2 weeks. So
3-ish.
Okay. Any other questions about this topic? Dr. Conti? No?
No, I've sort of exceeded my air conditioning knowledge at this point.
All right. Next topic is the Fox Hill School Building Committee.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly would hand this over to Ms. Massardo or Bob, so.
I'm going to try to stay brief. We had 2 meetings last week. So the first one was May 16th. That was an SBC meeting, which we were presented with updates. On May 18th, we had the community meeting, which not only reviewed those, but also got input from the community as well. Both of these meeting videos and minutes either will be on the Fox Hill Building Project website, but are also on YouTube and on BCAT's station as well, too. So if people need to follow up. And I just wanted to note that next week, we have an SBC meeting on May 30th. So a lot of talks, a lot of conversations have been happening and will continue to happen. So I think that's the update for now.
All right. Any other comments?
Just again, I've been spending a lot of time with my staff on the program document, which needs to describe the programs we want in the building. And we're working now to finish that up. So again, as an example, we would need to describe our elementary art program. And so George Rakovich, as our K-12 visual arts director, would see that to make sure that we were including parts of the program so that when MSBA approves the program, then Danisco Designs can then make sure they're designing the space that reflects the programmatic needs. One of the things that we are trying to introduce and work on MSBA with is, you all know that the DSC program at Pine Glen is expanding and we're adding classrooms. At some point, even if we weren't going to build a building, at some point we don't want one school to turn into sort of a sub-separate school for all of that programming. So as we get, we're going to be at 5 classrooms next year. As we grow to 6 classrooms, what we would do, again, without any of this building project, is we would probably look to split the program and look at the kids a little bit more granularly in terms of their needs, and probably move, say, 3 of those classrooms into another elementary school. So because the program doesn't currently exist in Fox Hill, again, doesn't mean that we should delay that or move that or not have that be part of our program document for the MSBA. But I think they want to know that we're not sort of packing the program, and I want to make sure that the program reflects our authentic needs, which is a growing DSC program at Pine Glen, because you all know we're making closets into we have no more space at Pine Glen. We actually have no space at Fox Hill, but we would need to do something because if we're evaluated by DESE, and again, we have a whole building where all of those classrooms exist, then that wouldn't reflect well in the district either. So that's, I think, so the program document is going to be very important, and we're spending a lot of time on that. Again, reflecting our current program, but also asking MSBA to understand that we have some growing needs and that we need the space to reflect that.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Next is the BHS building update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Town Meeting, and thank you to Ways and Means. Since you're here, I will extend gratitude for your support of a Burlington High School feasibility study. What we committed to Town Meeting and Ways and Means and the school committee, we'd like to start to follow through with. And that commitment is to follow the MSBA process as closely as we can, even though we're not accepted into the MSBA process, because as an optimist, I'm hoping someday we might be. And if we have followed their process, then I'm hoping that retroactively some of those expenses could be or would be considered to be reimbursable. So if it hasn't been that long, when we went through the Fox Hill process, the first thing we did was to create a school building committee. We're going to borrow some of the language and some of the templates from the MSBA. So what I wanted to talk tonight with the school committee is to discuss a school building committee, or creating a school building committee for Burlington High School to oversee the feasibility study in the phase of feasibility, and then as we put out the RFP and select an OPM, that we would again be following that process. So what you have in front of you as part of your packet is, or here is the MSBA template for a school building committee, and I wanted to get the school committee members' feelings on the high school building committee in moving forward. We're going to have some concurrent building conversations. We have lots of needs, but I don't think we can delay this any longer than it's been delayed, and so that's kind of the conversation for tonight. Is town meeting has generously supported our request for a feasibility study. We'd like to start moving forward with that feasibility study.
So in terms of process, previously, I think you took care of a lot of it. Do you want to sort of go through this and make suggestions, and how would you like to proceed?
I'd like to, again, I mostly want to have a conversation. I can certainly name people, but the challenge with this is you already know how many meetings we're having with Fox Hill. To have a concurrent process is time consuming. I think obviously if we have our procurement certified person, that would be Nicole.
Yeah.
But at some point, we have to sort of figure this out. Really what I would like to hear from the school committee is, again, I'll sit on it. Mark Sullivan will sit on this with this committee. We have a minimum of one is what the MSBA recommends for school committee. All 5 of you are on Pine Glen. I'm not sure if all 5 of you want to start on the high school and then come and go. You may want to divide the work. I didn't want to make that decision for the committee. There's lots of work to do on both, but I do think we need to have a public and established school building committee for Burlington High School. Then we'll need to, again, go out to the principal, have him go out to the community. Like to have some parents on there, like to have some teachers on there. And again, I'm assuming Mr. Denizio, Mr. Sagarino would be sort of part of this. I'm assuming someone, if we want to have representation, we would have the representation from whomever. But the question I had is, 2 building projects at once is a lot, but we need to do it. And if all 5 of you want to be informed, which I believe you do, then do we start with just having all 5 of you on both building committees, and then you all can determine sort of how to participate, when to participate? I didn't want to make that decision for the committee, so that's...
So I would like to suggest that people comment on that suggestion, that if, at the moment, all 5 of us are on the Fox Hill or the Burlington Elementary School Building Project. And I know I'm interested in being on the high school one, and I know Mrs. Monaco has already expressed her interest in being on the high school one, Mrs. Bond. And so, Mrs. Massardo and Mr. Brooks, have you any other comments about, would you like to be on the high school committee as well at this point? And again, as Dr. Conti said, we can always choose to be on only one later, or join, that kind of thing. So what are we have 3 people who are interested in the high school project. Do we have 5? Have you thought about it, or would you like more time to think about it? So.
I'll start on it.
Okay.
It's fine.
And
Yeah, I'll start too. I sent my resume about a year and a half ago to Dr. Conti, so I think I already volunteered.
All right, okay. So for now, we'll have all 5 of us on that committee as well. We will need to there's sort of unspoken, but I don't know if we need to do it now, but we will need to choose a chair for that committee, and I don't know if tonight is a good time to do that, or if we should wait till we have a meeting of it. Does that make sense?
Madam Chair, my suggestion, let me put the rest of the committee
Okay,
together. I just
great.
really want to know the committee's feelings, and
Yeah.
then we'll put names and contacts there, get some parents, community members, and
So you'll put together the rest of it, and we'll take it from there.
yeah, Bob, do we
Okay.
need to do
Madam
anything
Chairman.
else from sort of the MSBA perspective?
No, again, this is the template directly provided from the MSBA. I just want to, minus the members that are there is a category for other. So I think that is the field where we could choose, other staff members, maybe Christina in special ed, or other people as well, too, that would be interested, that also would help with the educational profile and plan as well, so.
So Dr. Conti, will you take on that task
Yes,
of doing
absolutely.
that?
So at our next
Okay.
meeting, you should have, again, a suggestion for a high school
Okay.
building committee because I want to approach people and ask them. I don't want to put them on, so
Okay.
we'll go from there.
And Ms. Massardo?
I had gotten feedback. I was not on the school committee when the Fox Hill School Building Committee was formed. That I think folks, parents and teachers weren't necessarily informed of the process to kind of volunteer or apply to be on the building committee. So I don't know how we can make that communicated or more transparent for the faculty and parent involvement. If we can.
Do you want to comment on that, Dr. Conti?
No, again,
You'll
I'll
work on it.
certainly
Okay.
try. There's, Ms. Massaro, you obviously, there's a, we can't have everybody, so at some point, we can inform everybody and then have some sort of process to move forward. Again, this is a multi-year process, and we all know the point of the feasibility would be primarily to hire an OPM and then sort of support the OPM as they go through sort of their work. And so I think that initially, I remember from the Fox Hill, we didn't meet or need to meet a whole lot, and then all of a sudden it picked up the pace right away. So we'll probably go through that same process, but during the slower time, we can certainly reach out to more folks and have those conversations, explain what feasibility is. I think that would be,
And whatever you do, don't line up everything with either the 4th of July and Christmas, because that is how the schedule worked out for Fox Hill.
okay, so
Okay. All right, Mr. Brooks?
Just one small comment. So I know this is kind of hard, but trying to get that good cross-section of the community, right? So parents that are currently have kids in Fox Hill, or excuse me, the high school, maybe that have recently graduated, folks that are in middle school, elementary school parents, and try to get that good cross-section, as we've learned recently, that representation to make sure we get all our bases covered.
So, and I'd like to put out a request. I think that choosing a chair may be a difficult process and decision for us. I know the last time we had one process and then we switched it, and I was thinking perhaps as chair that people could, since we can't have, because of the open meeting law, if individuals wanted to share with me if they're interested in being the chair of this committee, then I would know how many people are interested, and I could use that to help the process perhaps go more smoothly in the future. So I would like to invite all the other members to let me know if you're interested in being the chair on this committee. Okay? And are there any other comments on the high school building project? Okay. All right, and then the Pine Glen building project is on the agenda as was requested. I would like to suggest that now that we have, as was discussed at the last week's school building committee, that it's no longer a Fox Hill school building project. It's a Burlington Elementary School project, which may end up replacing Fox Hill, and Pine Glen, and it really involves the entire Pine Glen community. And we've added Pine Glen, and we will be adding Pine Glen community members to the Burlington Elementary School building project, which MSBA is going to keep calling it the Fox Hill School building project, but we don't have to. And so I'm wondering if having a separate project discussion on Pine Glen would be duplicative at this point, or if people want to go ahead. And so, other comments?
I was just going to say, I think it has more to do with than just the project we're working on now. I think people want to talk about the future for Pine Glen in general, what are we going to do to, I know we do a very good job of maintaining, but I just think people want to start talking about it a little bit to plan ahead if we don't put or combine the two schools together, just start thinking about what the future is. And that's
Okay.
why I think it's getting added here, just so it doesn't, we don't forget about it, and Pine Glen doesn't feel like it's not an important school and we're not thinking about it.
Okay, any other comments? Ms. Massardo?
Yeah, we can keep it as a separate agenda item. I think it's very much the top of our mind in the building process that whatever we do with the Fox Hill project affects Pine Glen regardless of building. So I don't think it makes a difference where it falls on the agenda, but everyone knows we need to put money into Pine Glen at some point in time.
Okay. Other comments? So, we have an agenda item to talk about the Pine Glen School as a standing agenda item. Does anyone have any comments they want to make about it? Well, you mentioned that people want to make sure that it's discussed, which is important. Is there anything in particular people want to raise tonight? Okay. All right. So, got that. The last topic, Dr. Conti, is the Community Athletic Field Advisory Committee discussion.
I just wanted to speak to the school committee, and I'm actually very happy that Mr. Eiler and Mr. Moran are still here. Thank you for your patience through this evening. But one of the feelings I got, and it's certainly not scientific, when I was presenting some of the warrant articles, especially for the new baseball field that resulted from the field study that we did, is there seemed to be a lot of different perspectives on the field, and I think even to the point where some parents and some community members had moved forward on a warrant article by themselves. I think there was a member of Ways and Means who was also a part of Park and Rec who said, what's the connection between sort of the two projects? So what Bob and I had talked about, and I think it's a very good idea, and want to sort of commend Bob for thinking this way, and also with our experience on the Fox Hill Committee and now the Burlington High School Building Committee, is we have invested in this athletic field study report that we had. Bob, you said the full report is 500 pages, and so it's there's a lot of information there. There's obviously a lot of money associated with the upgrades over time in the prioritization. So I just think it felt to me like the projects would be more effectively presented at town meeting if there were a committee presenting and not just me. That's what I was thinking. So Bob, you talked about putting together, again, a committee. It doesn't need to meet weekly, but it needs to meet, whatever, with some community representation, some parents, some youth sports representatives, Park and Rec representatives, elected and Burlington Public Schools sort of represented. Again, Mr. Brooks, I'm not volunteering you, but I'm assuming as the Park and Rec person that you would sort of sit in this committee. And so let's say the next priority is a middle school project, and all of those groups agree, then Mr. Eiler, Mr. Moran, when we come to you, it's not, again, my priority or my presentation. It would be really a presentation from a group of, again, parents, youth sports, Park and Rec, and Burlington Public Schools, because everyone really uses those facilities. So then that's the intention behind this group. Again, we invested in the study. We have the study. If they could put together, again, a 5 or 10-year plan, because even in Mr. Eiler's presentation earlier this evening, whereas there's also capital needs with some of the fields projects that we would think about as well. And so that was a feeling I got. I don't need you to validate the feeling, but I'm assuming that that was sort of, I'm not the sharpest tool, Mr. Eiler, but I pick up on things once in a while, so. So I think that was one of the things. So if you're questioning what the Community Athletic Field Advisory Committee, you can have a snap of your name. I just put that out there, and we're going to sort of recruit some different people, and then, again, ultimately, if it's a school capital warrant, it would come through the school committee. So we're not giving away any of your authority, but I believe some of the projects are going to be well over the allocated capital project money that we have. And we have other building facilities needs, and my first priority is going to be supporting the facilities so the educational program can be delivered. But there may be other projects that, again, if we work together, that we can try to support. So I don't think there needs to be anything official, and again, I was sort of assuming, again, that we would have a Park and Rec elected official, we would have a school committee elected official, and then other folks would sort of want to do that moving forward. So I guess this was more of a discussion. You can tell me it's a bad idea, but I don't know. So Mr. Brooks, you're nodding, I'm assuming you'd be interested?
I agree with this. I would just like to suggest we tie in the Recreation Commission, because again, they have other parks and fields, and because this is more of a whole community-focused activity, I'd like to tie them in a little tighter and, help prioritize things a little bit more across the town than just focusing on a few athletic fields.
And also, some of these projects are not on school property, so some of them wouldn't be school facilities, and many of them are. So that, I feel like that would be an important thing to keep track of.
Right. Again, if this group is successful with the field study that we've done, which are largely our fields, I think there's another study that is being supported by Park and Rec. I would assuming it would make sense then if there are other community facilities that they could sort of roll it in. I'm honestly just trying to get out of presenting at town meeting. That's my motivation. So, but I do think if there's, if we go, again, in front of Ways and Means with school committee approval and with approval from a group, it would also answer some of the questions that we were being asked about all these projects anyway. Have you spoken with, have you involved so-and-so? And I do think a lot of these meetings took place anyway, but I think if it was more formalized, it would just be more efficient. So
I think it's a good idea. Are there other people who have any other comments they want to make? No. Okay. Are there any other issues?
Just two quick things, because I did receive a text from Mrs. Ciccolini. So she wanted me to mention the Evening Academy graduation is Thursday, June 8th at 6 p.m. in the lower library. So I think that's, and also a reminder that we were visited by the robotics team. They have a demonstration happening tomorrow night, May 24th, between 6:30 and 8 in the lower library at the high school as well. So I got reminded of that while I was here. So I have no other announcements at the time. So
is there anything else to come before this body? I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The chair votes aye. We are adjourned.